Welcome back. Hopefully you are all doing well, feeling well, practicing social distancing. As you may or may not know, the governor of California, Governor Gavin Newsom, recently put out a statement basically ordering all residents, all citizens of California to shelter in place, meaning all of you should be at home. You should not be going out unless you're picking up food, you have some important medical need, or you're picking up medicine, something along those lines. Otherwise, you should be staying in your home and not going out. Also, I was getting some questions from some of you on the Instagram page, which you can follow at Rodriguez_class. I'm going to post your homework there as well as on Google Classroom. But some of you are asking about whether or not we were coming back. Right now we are scheduled to return on April 6th, but don't be surprised if that date gets pushed back to May, June. There's a possibility that we won't have the graduation, that we might not come back, which means you need to be staying on top of your work. I know some of you out there, Alejandro, Alexander, made some comments that you were too lazy to do your work. Well, then I hope you're happy with ending your trimester in 8th grade with an F, because this is not a vacation. We are practicing distance learning. I am distance teaching, you are distance learning. We're all doing this together. We're all in this unprecedented event together, and I need you to do your part while I do my part. And I will give you a grade as best I possibly can. But if you're doing nothing, you'll have an F, just FYI. So, with that being said, your task was to read pages 183 in your textbook through 189. This is the lesson on the two-party system, which developed after the presidency of George Washington. Americans have always been politically divided. I think right now we feel like we're divided in the age of Trump. We were divided under President Obama, divided under President Bush, and so on and so forth. And this division politically goes as far back to the Founding Fathers. President Washington, however, really opposed political parties and factions because he believed that it would cause Americans to divide amongst one another. As you read on page 183, he says parties would lead to jealousies and false alarms. And most Americans agreed that political parties were a bad thing. But in a way, they're almost a natural occurrence when you have people of different backgrounds, different philosophies, different ideas about the way things should work, especially the way government should work. It's natural that political parties would flourish. And that's what happened. We had two parties emerge, as you read in this chapter, the Democratic Republicans and the Federalists. George Washington, as I had talked with you earlier, was a living legend. He was someone who united Americans. He was someone who was regarded as the father of the nation, really, because he had been the general during the Revolution. He was someone who was guiding and promoted the Constitution, and then obviously as the first president. But George Washington was no longer president, and then shortly died after he was in office. And there was no longer one individual to unite the country. And so political parties formed around Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson. Hamilton and Jefferson could not be two more different persons. They could not be more different, the two of them. So, for example, Hamilton, he was born in the British West Indies. He was an immigrant. He worked his way up. He had a lot of mentors. He had a lot of people who supported him, but he really was brilliant. He really went out of his way to put himself in situations where he could advance in the military, in law, and then eventually in government. He was someone from New York. He was very much part of the business banking class of society. He promoted manufacturing. He was very much a northern New England American. Jefferson, on the other hand, was very much a Southerner. He was born in Virginia to a very wealthy family. From his perspective, government should be in the hands of, the farmers, the simple people, the landowners. He believed that as a democracy, the United States was better kept in the hands of white, educated landowners. He didn't trust bankers, he didn't trust Northerners, he didn't trust merchants. And so that's where you sort of start to see the Northerners forming a party around Hamilton in the north, and then you see the Southerners forming a party around Jefferson. That would be the Democratic Republicans. The Federalists around Hamilton, they also favored a strong government. They were very much sympathetic to England and the parliamentary governmental style of England. And of course, they believed that the best way to make the country prosperous and flourish was to promote a strong, solid economy, one based on trade, banking, and eventually investing. Whereas Jefferson was against strong government. He favored more a smaller government, governments that were more state-based, local-based. And obviously he was more opposed to the national bank that Hamilton had put in place under the Washington administration. And he believed that the economy should be based on agriculture, on just people living on their farms, being self-sustaining, that should be the basis of the economy. So those two things really came into conflict. The Federalists and the Democratic Republicans, one favoring a strong government and banking, one favoring small government and agriculture. But we'll also see these differences coming into play when we see France and England at war with each other. Hamilton and the Federalists wanted to continue trading with England because they wanted to model the economy on England's economy, whereas Thomas Jefferson and the Democratic Republicans wanted to be allies with France because they had been our allies during the Revolutionary War. But Jefferson was also a huge supporter of revolutions, and so when the French had their revolution, Jefferson was very enthusiastic about it, even though the French Revolution became violent and bloody. So that became another sticking point between those two men and those two parties. And another feature of this time period we're looking at is the rise of political newspapers that backed parties. So there were newspapers that were very much in Hamilton's camp, and they were very supportive of the Federalists. And on the other hand, you had newspapers that were very pro-Thomas Jefferson and pro-Democratic Republicans. Okay, and we'll look at that later in the next video. But it's very important to note that the country was divided. And as you know, #spoiler, Hamilton would, in just a few short years, be gunned down by Thomas Jefferson's vice president, Aaron Burr. That's how bad the political divisions were at this time. So as we wrap up, I just want to ask you, I'll be putting this out in a Google Classroom assignment, but here's the question. Of the two men, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, which of those two would you have supported and why? Please explain your answer with examples from the book and from this video, if you like. I will be posting this in the Google Classroom, so pay attention, be doing your assignments, turn them in, and when I see them, I will grade them. And like I said earlier, find me on Instagram. We can interact there. I will answer your questions. But like I said, this is not vacation. This is not playtime. I'm expecting you to work and learn from home, Alejandro and Alexander. And I will be working from home teaching, okay? Creating lessons, putting them out in various forms. So these videos are on YouTube. I'll be on Instagram. And of course, I'll be on Google Classroom. So there's no excuse not to be working. Anyway, take care, stay safe, and I will see you in the next video. Tighten up. No, that's not good. Tighten up, cheese bags. I can't think of it. I'll get something. All right, we're fine. Bye. Take care. Bye.